Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's meeting. I'd like to start the meeting off with a moment of silent prayer.
Flag of the United States to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we're going to move on to public comments. First up will be Jerry Sykes.
My four speakers on the phone, you just go fast. Jerry Sykes, 896 hours following the against. I'm a member on the Farm Labor Board, and I'm speaking only on my behalf, not the board, because I don't know how they feel about all this. But anyway, we discuss various things in the meetings, but fishing is the most discussed thing because it's the main attraction at the lake. We know the traffic population was out of balance over there, so we discussed this with biologists at the Wildlife Resources Commission. After surveys, we found out that the traffic was stunning, too many fish, and very slow growth rate. Worked with the Wildlife Resources Commission, and we also approved we get stock in the 2022 high restraint bags. They had two stock of those about the next time. The purpose was twofold. One was to provide fishing opportunities, and the second was because harbor bass and crabapple population live in the same areas of the lake, then they maybe consume some of those stunning crab. And I would hopefully we get it back to the point where normal growth rates for the crab, so they're so slow. I think we have an obligation to do what we can to improve the fishing for the public and for the kids. We have a very successful Kids Day. I want to thank y'all very much for the support that you offer for that. We want the kids to have a great day. Then each time we come back to them, what I think one way we can do that is improve the fishing. And understanding the fishing goes a long way in understanding. I think understanding the fishing goes a long way in understanding the environment, wildlife, water quality, pollution, and many other things, including time spent with a parent, a grandparent, or a friend. So somebody fishing at Farm Lake might see deer, turkeys, you know, anything. Might even see an eagle, you never know. And I can't express what I think about the importance of the fishing and the positive effect it can have on a kid who otherwise might be tempted for what's on the streets. I said all that to say this. I think we missed a great opportunity on June 19th when y'all were tasked with appointing new board members. A person I know was applied but was not approved. This person probably knows more about fish species, fish habitat, water quality, lake forage fishing, lake boats, and fishing than anyone I know. He also knows the importance of providing fishing opportunities for kids if he makes several trips each year taking kids fishing. His application did not detail any of those things. He was not going to put those things on there. So y'all didn't know when y'all had that thing with it. CD, he also applied. He's been on the board for years, and he was denied. Kind of disappointing. He was involved in all these things that I mentioned earlier. He was a big part in all of it. He was involved in trying to improve the fishing as much as any of us was. He was there for the fishing tournaments, and he worked endlessly on those kids' days. understanding that I was under the understanding that someone served on a volunteer basis was in good standing almost always, was almost always approved. I think Steve was much more than just good standing. He was a big part of the board. Certainly wasn't because of his lack of dedication, because he was always there and he was kept as much as he can. So I urge you and I urge y'all in the future to recognize the importance of quality fishing, especially for the kids. And please take seriously applicants for those positions. Thank you.
Next up is Thomas Wright.
Bernard, we declared November 28, 2017. We still have the same problem, the same assessment of property. $8,779 add to my property that I never had and shouldn't have been there. He read it well. He said that same to him that it was a letter that Bernard sent to me for me to come down and talk. I don't know what it meant to him, but it definitely didn't mean that to me. And I went down, we went to ride down out to the road to see about it. And when we got down there, Brian Parade, kind of turned. He told the board before we even got started not to read this letter. This letter is false. This letter is false. And nobody ran out to tell him that this was his throat in. And he said it was $132,568. And if you be solved, he should be solved. All we got to do is ask him. What they did is not what they told me, but I never seen them appeal. When you appeal something, you go, they give your side before they make a decision. Their decision was made before I got down. What he said, go ahead, contacted him and told him that it was the city work. I'm gonna read it. What he got. Dear Mr. Wright, the North Carolina Department of Revenue contacted this office confirms the value of your 69.64 acre parcel of land in Carroll County that you appealed to the commission. It was determined that the same wide on the department still had the tenant tax, even though called by concrete block for years straight. We have reduced the value of the 69.64 acre parcel to $132,568. $506. We also move from real estate and to the public park. Oh, correct real estate figures and correct public park. You'll see to this adjustment by your 69.648 back in front of the Northern Department. Please sign your tax form and return it to the county tax office. I signed a form. I signed a form call. I didn't know whether they did take him there or not. I still don't know. I don't believe that appeal is decided before you get there. I think this board can get that, get the answer for that. You can get the answer to the common. It shouldn't be no problem. And county attorney, Tom Bernard, the county attorney, defended his own. Ask him. You know, it's $8,775 what you don't charge me for. 2004 until now, still ain't never took it off. Still there. And I want to correct it. And he ain't gonna correct it until somebody was authority get there.
Mr. Thomas, what are you asking the board to do?
What am I asking the board to do?
Yes, sir.
I'm asking the board to ask Tommy Bernard and Brian Ferrer, why haven't they corrected it? Because it's a little bit complicated if you ain't been there and you don't know it. It's a little bit complicated, but I'm tired of mobile home on the lot. If the mobile home never worked out, and been charged for all of years, you don't want to get it right. And you don't got that right for him. He transferred $8,765 to another option. And I don't think that's it. But you can't find out about it by asking. Well, he don't tell you the truth. I'm gonna have to take him to civil court anyhow. I have a lawyer. The lawyer said that he don't have criminal. It is criminal if he wrote this letter and they didn't tell him, they didn't give him the time. That's fraud. Not I'm told you that. So, you know, you got a power to ask. Or that way you don't take the truth. Ain't nobody gonna be there if you get around with him. He's shoving the paper around. I mean, that ain't all. That's the main thing I want off. But they won't go away. There's no way you can get it out. Just stick with that. All right, that's all I got.
Thank you for your comments. Sir, would it be possible, would it be possible to have Mr. Bernard look at this and give us the position of the county tax office? The date on this 2017. That passed the time frame that we have in control. So there's nothing to
We can't hear you.
I was asking the county attorney, the date on this document is 2017. We can go back how many years?
I think it's 4 + 1.
5 years. This is outside.
Brian, jump in here anytime you'd like. When you're appealing your tax valuation, you can only appeal your current year tax valuation. To appeal a year in 2000, the tax year 2017, you can't do anything with. If there was an appeal about today's valuation, and you found that there was an error in today's valuation, you could go back, I think it's 4+1, is that correct, Ryan?
Right, 4+1.
So I think you could go back 4+1 if you found an error.
So I guess again, Mr. Farrell, my question is, for clarity's sake, we have no jurisdiction over this issue because of the time frame, or do
Right, it's, we did have a pre-hearing conference with Mr. Wright recently there in the county in advance of the upcoming appeal that Mr. Wright has filed to the North Carolina Property Tax Commission that will be heard next month. We have certainly heard from Mr. Wright over the years about various tax disputes that he has with his properties. As a county, I believe we're doing our best to understand those and address those proactively, including the 2017 issues. At this point in time, I'm not 100% clear what Mr. Wright is actually seeking, but what I'll say is I know the county has worked diligently to make sure that his tax card is accurate and that he receives the attention about the issues that he's raised as closely as we can give it. So Mr. Wright certainly has the right to appeal the current tax valuation, and he's doing that. And we'll be in Raleigh next month to talk to the Property Tax Commission about his appeal. I understand Mr. Wright has issues with a 2017 letter that Mr. Bernard wrote to him. Quite frankly, I don't share the same view of that letter that Mr. Wright has, but I understand that's of concern to him, and he's raising that to you. My understanding is he believes that that letter perhaps somehow improperly influenced him to resolve a case that he had with the county at that time. I believe that's what the issue is.
So one more question. The key thing I'm taking from your presentation is that it is under appeal now and it's going before the appeals process in Raleigh.
Yes, this particular property tax parcel 8626, the tax valuation of that for the 2022 tax year has been appealed and is on appeal. And so we look forward to having that play out in front of the Property Tax Commission next month.
Any other comments? So your official position would be let it play out with the appeals process?
I believe so, to the extent that his comments relate to the 2022 appeal. It perhaps is Mr. Wright's interest just to appear before you and give you his view of the some letter that he received some years ago. I'm not entirely sure, but as to the appeal, as to the valuation, the current tax valuation of Mr. Wright's property identified as tax parcel 8626, I would say absolutely yes. That matter is under appeal. The jurisdiction now is with the Property Tax Commission, and the matter should be handled there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Thurber. So can you convey what has been talked about here? This is our tax office.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Are there any recognition of the? There being none, we'll move on to approval of the agenda. There's been one item added to the agenda that's not listed on your printout, and that will become item number 12, and that is the addition of the contract for collecting delinquent taxes for casualty. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? So we're have a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. On to approval of the consent agenda, and it consists of the meetings from the June 12th budget work session, June 13th budget work session minutes, and the June 19th regular meeting minutes. Are there any questions or corrections to those minutes? Do I have a motion to approve?
So, second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries. On to the discussion items. The Zytel Great Grant and Rodney Gray.
Good evening, members of the board. Thank you for having me down here this evening. So my name is Rodney Gray. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Zytel. Zytel is an ISP and internet service provider headquartered in Southern Virginia. To give you a little background about our company, we pride ourselves on being an internet service provider in the Commonwealth of Virginia and very rural communities. That's where we started. That's how we do business, and that's where we have cut our teeth on providing internet service in rural parts of Virginia, and Bedford County specifically is what we started right at Step Mountain Lake. We look very much to expanding into North Carolina. We have won 7 grants in 7 different counties in North Carolina to provide fiber optic internet service to the citizens. We are a smaller, privately owned company. We can do things differently than our big providers, the bigger companies that are the leftovers of the Mob Bell telecommunications days. Some of the things we do is we look at our local government grant awardees as partners. The way we work with Bedford County, Campbell County, and Carroll County in Virginia. We can do things like we offer dark fiber services to those localities to connect their facilities together. I know you may not know what a POP is. A POP is a telecommunications point of presence. It's the little beige buildings on the corners of lots with chain link fences around them. Very, about 10 foot by 10 foot concrete walled buildings of telecommunications. They usually lease those properties for 100 years. They're kind of an eyesore. One of the things we do differently is we work with our local government partners to put a POP inside of a volunteer rescue squad or volunteer fire department. They have generators, they have empty closet space, they're secure. And what we can do is we can offer those volunteer fire departments free internet service for the life of the time that they provide us to allow distribute the fiber through the neighborhoods. Usually volunteer fire departments and rescue squads are in town center, city center, population center. It gives us the opportunity to interact better with the community and make better relationships that way, because we're utilizing current small government infrastructure to provide services to all the citizens. One of the things that our keys to our success, we keep our keys to our success, we keep our overhead low. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the company. I'm one of the minority owners. I come here tonight to speak to you. We don't have government liaisons, a vice president of this, a vice president of that comes out to speak to you guys. We work with everybody directly. We own our own outside plant construction company. About 70% of the fiber that we put in the ground or on the poles is done by in-house personnel. We don't subcontract that out, so that way we can keep our costs low, keep our services low. We own all the fiber that we have. We designed this company in 2017 when we started to do things differently. Brandon and I designed this company to operate differently than what most people are used to. Example, the cable provider that I used to use when I lived in Roanoke was every 2 years, the price would get jacked up. I'm paying $250 a month for cable TV and internet. I would call them and they'd say, oh, you're outside your promotional period, your 2-year special pricing. We don't do that. The price we offer is the price you get. There's no 2-year commitment, 2-year contract. Everything's up front. Everything's right on the front page of the website. Costs, fees, taxes, everything we provide. So we have over 20 years of IT network security consulting. That's how this company started. That's what we did for the past 20 years as we morphed into an ISP, different than our telecommunication providers who are the old telephone companies. We come from an IT background. So the slide in front of you now is our current build in the local communities around Bedford County, Virginia, Smith Mountain Lake, the city of Danville, Lynchburg, and Campbell County. We have about 250 miles of fiber in the ground and we serve about 12,000 citizens in Southern Virginia. Next slide. Next slide is our body. Body is the great grant equivalent in Virginia Telecommunications Initiative. We were awarded 417 miles of fiber in an 18-month project in Bedford County, Virginia. We're about 70% completed that. We're on time and under budget in Bedford County, which will give us another 20,000 potential passings. Passings are possible customers that can light up with fiber. All right, so this is a map that shows our fiber route here in Caswell County, what we were awarded by the state NCDIT, the North Carolina Department of Information Technology, under the GRADE grant. It's going to have 906 eligible address passings. It's really the only, that number is only, that only matters to the state. Those are the customers that are unserved and underserved that don't have the minimum broadband connectivity at their home. That's how they gauge the grant and what the costs are. The true number is that our fiber will pass 3,812 addresses or citizen addresses in your county. The remaining above the 1906 will have a competitive choice now in who they're going to choose for their internet service provider. It's going to be about 144 miles of fiber that we're going to put down in Caswell County. The total project cost, and of course I can't see it, is just over $6 million. $4 million of that was awarded to from the state in a grant to us. Caswell County contribution is $250,000, and Zytel's contribution will be invested to almost $2.5 million in your county with fiber optic infrastructure. This shows a more detailed map that shows all of the eligible passings of what the state used to identify. Next slide will show you the total passings of all addresses that will be serviced by fiber by Zytel when the project is complete. This is the fiber route. The stars represent the volunteer fire departments and rescue squads that we have identified that we will be contacting once we get all of our permitting in place and our approvals in place with NCDOT, Duke Energy, the local co-op power company, and once we get the state of North Carolina to recognize us as a CLEC. Those are the local fire departments that we'll contact and see if we can partner with to provide a POP to those facilities and give them free internet service and free television inside their facilities. This is our current monthly service rates for our plans. We have a residential 100 all the way to a gigabit plan, same thing for small businesses. And we can also provide enterprise class service to your large industrial parks, large major businesses, hospitals, things like that, or government facilities if you want an enterprise plan. All of our basic costs and surcharges, monthly rentals of equipment are all listed right there. And the same is on our front page of the website with high daily costs. Next slide. New offerings coming soon. Television services are on here, but television services are already being offered in Virginia. We have a premium television. It's a streaming service that we partner with a company called Vidgo that we can now provide to all of our customers. It gives about 150 television channels. Not exactly sure which local channels they carry in the Caswell County area. In Virginia, they get all the locals except for NBC. They've yet to hold their nail down the contract with NBC because NBC is owned by Comcast Universal, which of course is Comcast Xfinity. So the negotiation is a little more difficult to carry that channel. We also have a residential basic 50 plan that's eligible to all of our low income citizens that qualify for the ACP, the Affordable Connectivity Program with the federal government. If they apply for that, they get a $30 discount that we get reimbursed from the federal government. Basically, we give any household that qualifies a free 50 meg. And that has been changed now. It's actually a synchronous plan, which is 50 meg down and 50 meg up internet service that would be for free. Next slide. So one of the other things we do that we focus on, that we're a rural carrier. Most rural communities, I know in Virginia and especially in North Carolina, you have this extremely long gravel driveway or you live down a long private road. Call other larger national carriers, they want $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 to run that circuit down your long gravel road or driveway. We don't do that. We offer a 1,000-foot drop from the main road for free. So up to 1,000 feet. Anything over 1,000 foot, we only charge $1 per foot to cover the cost of the cable. And so let's say you're 2,000 foot up the main road, you have a really long driveway, it's a quarter of a mile. We still want to get you hooked up with the internet without having some huge upfront cost. So you get 1,000 foot for free, you got to pay 1,000 foot. That's $1,000. Not money that somebody has in their pocket that they can pay right away to hook up to internet. Then we do get into where you can become a 24-month, 36-month, 48-month contracted customer. We immediately knock 20% off of that, becoming a contracted customer, and then we'll divide it into an equal monthly payment, paying $10, $15 a month on top of your internet bill to pay for the cost of that long drop to get to your home. Those are the different things that we can do different based on being a smaller company, being a regional company, being privately owned. We can do differently than our big providers. I think we're a great fit for Caswell County, and we're really looking forward to the opportunity to start building our fiber here and providing service to your citizens. Any questions?
Mr. Gray, I got a question. You said long gravel driveways, y'all will cover that. In Caswell, we have a lot of gravel driveways that are state maintained. Somebody lived at the end of a state maintained gravel dirt road. Does that still, because that is a state maintained road, would you still go there?
Yes. If it's part of the map that we have been granted, that great grants or NCDIT has given us in their eligible addresses, we are required to go down that road to get there. Now, a lot of times these gravel roads, they may not have NCDIT easement on them, public utilities. So we have to negotiate with the landowners. 99% of the time, they have no problem because they're getting able to get a service that they're desperately in need for. And we'll negotiate and get an easement down the side of the gravel road. Even if it's a gravel road, state maintained, we'll maintain the NCDOT requirements. I'm not sure how NCDOT differs from Virginia. In Virginia, we have to be within 30 foot of the center line of the road. We have to be 36 inches deep along the edge of the road. We maintain those exact same standards whether we're on a state maintained gravel road or a private road, because a lot of private roads, I'm sure in North Carolina, just like Virginia, they get enough houses on them, they'll petition NCDOT to take them over state maintained roads, and we'll want to make sure we're within the tolerances so that we don't interfere with that in the future.
One question, Rick, when do you foresee start construction? Yeah.
So that's the $1 million question.
That's the reason I asked.
Right now, we are waiting for the attorneys to approve our CLEC. The CLEC is a cooperative local extension carrier. It has to do with the old mob bell telephone days. When you are a CLEC and you can provide competitive telephone service, being a CLEC through, I know in Virginia it's called the State Corporation Commission. I'm not sure who in North Carolina that state commission is that designates you as a CLEC. When you get that designation, getting into the road easements of NCDOT and getting on the poles, the joint use agreements with like Duke Power are much easier. They cost less and they will save us money over the long run. It's a long red tape bureaucratic process to become a CLEC. We've been going through this process for about 8 months now since we were notified of the award. It takes about a year. The entire project with NCDIT is a 2-year project. We're about, I think it's been 2 months since we signed all the contracts, Brian, is that about right? It's about 2 months, so we're 2 months into a 24-month project. Right now, we're working with NCDOT, we're working with Duke Power, the other co-ops to get all of our joint use agreements, get all of our right-of-ways so that we can get into the easements. That process, we're hoping will get cleared up in about the next 30 to 60 days, and we can start construction. 141 miles, it's only gonna take us about 6 months to do that project. So we're hoping spring 2024 will be completely done. That doesn't mean that's when we start hooking people up. We hook people up as we build. We'll go to the POPs and start there and build out from the POPs. As you get fiber in front of your home, you'll get a door hanger on your door. You'll see radio commercials, yard signs going up saying Zytel fiber optic internet is here. We'll start turning people up as we move down the line away from the POPs.
Are there any other questions from the board?
So we're hoping in the next 30 to 90 days, those maps that I just showed you will be published. We have smaller maps. They're difficult to read and try to find some of these addresses. We're hoping to have interactive maps linked back into our GIS system so citizens can go on there and look up their address, see if they're in the service footprint. I checked just before I came down here. Currently, we already have about 95 citizens in Caswell County pre-signed up for service that are along our route. We hope before we start, once we start marketing in this area, I think the passage of 3,800, we would like to see about a 50% take rate. see at least about 2,000 customers signed up. That's what counts. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you having me.
Next up on discussion item is service grant. Aisha Williams.
Greetings, Commissioners. It's my pleasure to stand before you this evening to discuss a grant application for new construction of a non-congregate shelter that we're calling the Lighthouse in Castle County. This is going to be through the Supportive Housing American Rescue Plan, referred to throughout this presentation as the SHARP program. This opportunity is funded and provided by the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency based in Raleigh. Next, we have a brief overview of family services. Just to remind you of this department, we are the domestic violence service provider for the county. We have been a part of Castle County government since July of 2010 when it moved operations from the town of Yanceyville. Family services is 95% grant funded. It is the responsibility of the executive director, myself, / department head to research and write every grant that family services receives. This is a review of our funding sources. As you see, Castle County government about 5% of our overall funding. Per the budget ordinance passed in June, our current operating budget is $373,000. So what do we do? This department is funded strictly to spend money for victims and survivors of domestic violence. We do that by meeting their basic needs such as food, shelter, safety, security, medical treatment, physical and mental needs. Next slide, please. So as the executive director, when I came on in April of 2019, I conducted a service delivery analysis. One thing that came up was that sheltering services, and that's how we call it, is very different than providing shelter. If someone in Castle County is fleeing a domestic violence situation, they will always be referred outside of the county. We cannot meet that need inside the county because we do not operate a domestic violence shelter. Other surrounding North Carolina counties, Rockingham, Guilford, Alamance, Orange, Person, they all maintain and operate a domestic violence and or an emergency shelter, as does Danville and Martinsville, Virginia. And in fact, Guilford County operates too, but they would with their size. The possible remedy is the SHARP program. This is a one-time only program, one-time only, that will not be offered again, to offer $3 million for the acquisition, rehabilitation, and or construction of a non-congregate shelter in only eligible and prioritized areas. And the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency has deemed Castle County as one of those areas. Castle County government, Family Services, has been invited to partner with the state of North Carolina and apply for SHARP program funding for a new non-congregate shelter that like I said, we're calling the Lighthouse of Castle County. If you look at your attachments 1A and 1B, that is what was submitted to the state, to the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency, and their response to the application. It's in the second packet of staples. When you think of a non-congregate shelter, what do you think of? Let's start with what a congregate shelter is. A congregate shelter is the big gymnasium that you think of after a natural disaster. This might be operated by a non-governmental organization like the American Red Cross. Everybody's in that gymnasium on cots with blankets, and that is a congregate shelter. A non-congregate shelter, everyone has their own private unit, and they maintain the autonomy in that unit. It does not require any occupants to sign a lease or any type of occupancy agreement. And I would just like to note that as far as a congregate shelter, I've worked in those, and that is not exactly appropriate for the victims or the survivors that we want to serve with this non-congregate shelter. So let's talk about estimated costs of construction. Per the architect and designer of the master plan, Tice Keister Architects, PA of Chapel Hill, construction costs are estimated between $2 million and $2.2 million. This is predicated upon a $400,000 purchase price, which is also dependent upon the appraisal. That also is located in that attachment 1A and 1B in your packet. So who would the shelter serve? This will be on the last attachment 3, qualifying populations. Homeless as defined by 24 CFR, homeless subsection 1, 2, or 3, at risk of homelessness as defined by 24 CFR 91.5, or also fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, or human trafficking, or other households with high risk of housing instability and at risk of homelessness. For the purposes of this conversation, we're focusing on prioritizing section option 3, fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, or human trafficking. And during the last fiscal year, 22-23, 73% of all calls to the Family Services Crisis Line were for emergency shelter. And every single one of those callers had been referred to another county. So let's talk upfront costs. Acquisition, $400,000, design, pre-development, 10% of developer's fee, and 20% of construction, which is estimated about $400,000 to $440,000. This is based upon a very rough preliminary estimate provided by the architects and our design consultant, our housing development consultant, who is here with us tonight. So you're probably wondering, how will this be dispersed? You have two options. One is you can take, let's start with the first option. Will be for at most 50% of the project cost, and it will not be dispersed until during construction. So specifically, our prioritized, we will be eligible for the $3 million grant. That will be $1.5 million. Second disbursement will be for $1.2 million. And the third and final disbursement will be for the remainder of $300,000. The other option is that you could certify your construction costs and get a reimbursement or disbursement, excuse me, at the end of construction. Here we get into some of the stipulations of the Sharp Award. It is not for operations. It is strictly for acquisition, rehabilitation, or new construction of a shelter. Is this a loan or is it a grant? I was told by the initial consultant, not Robin Hicks, who's here, like I said, with me tonight, that it is a loan that operates like a grant. It's a grant that operates like a loan. The North Carolina Housing Finance Agency is asking for a financial investment that is reimbursable through Sharp program funding, 100% reimbursable. All funds must be expended the deadline by 12/31/2030. The internal goal, if awarded and approved, is to have the shelter construction complete by fiscal year 26-27 or by the first quarter of March 27. Following that, the agency wants to have the shelter operation within the next fiscal year, which would be 27-28. So now you have the financing scenarios for Sharp program funding. The permanent lender is the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency. You have an option of obtaining a construction bridge loan. All costs associated with this project are again 100% reimbursable through Sharp program funding. That would include interest, principal, and a pre-approval letter from a lender is not required. Castle County government could also have a self-funded option, but I think the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency, for due diligence, would prefer that we have a lender. So we've talked about this shelter, this non-congregate shelter, let me be clear. So what are the expectations? First of all, family services is accustomed to securing grants for performance services. Programs and all interventions. Additional grant funding is available when a brick and mortar shelter is attached to a victim service provider. I can let you know that Castle County was solicited for this grant opportunity because a sheltering gap exists in this community. The North Carolina Housing Finance Agency, and this is only if the application for funding is approved, requires assurances that Castle County government is committed to successful outcomes for this award. It could be in the future that a completely new department might need to be formed for the operation of the lighthouse. It could also be that if there's a funding gap between grants and operating expenses, the county would ultimately assume responsibility for that. I can say that I've called other shelters that are comparable in the across the state, and they're not many, not really. I think the architect did one in Lee County. I know he did one in Lee County, Tice Keister Associate Architects. That's a 30-bed facility with a plethora of community service agencies housed in that building. We're looking at a 10 to 15 unit autonomous building. I also called Rockingham County. Their shelter can accommodate 3 families and 3 families alone. I can say that utilities can be estimated at $2 per square foot. A preliminary estimate of an operating budget was created and is about $370,000 in year 1. And then I have some additional thoughts. The possibility of this grant was introduced at the budget work session on April 21st. And I've included the minutes here. At that work session, we were given, family services was given clear guidance that more collaboration or cooperation was needed or requested between us and other victim service providers in the county. I want to let you know that the sheltering gap has been discussed between us and other victim service providers in the county, specifically the one that's named in the minutes, Crossroads. And they were here earlier. So next steps. Family Services is seeking approval from this body to apply for this funding. This is just an application. It is not binding. If the application is approved by the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency, the plans will be made available for public review. A public hearing would be scheduled. I will return on the agenda to request acceptance of this award. You would discuss this project. You would make the decision whether to accept the award or not. Commissioners, I've given you a great deal to consider this evening. In closing, I want to emphasize again that this is only an application. Nothing is binding if we apply and we are awarded the funds. This board makes a decision to accept or not accept if we get to that point. Thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity to present this award, this project, possible application. I'm available to answer any questions.
I have one. I think you said you turned away 73 domestic people to other counties.
73%, yes.
Okay. My understanding was that if you have a domestic case like that, you send them to another county because you can't protect them in this county. Is that correct?
No, we send them to where there's a shelter bed.
Okay, so being in this county does not matter.
It does. I'm a bit confused.
I was understanding that because of protection reasons, you try to move them out of the area to a different location.
We move them out of the area because we do not have a shelter. Now, as far as safety, some prefer to stay in the county. They may work here. They may have kids that are still in school here, and they may want to stay in this area. But some do want to move outside the county. But everyone that called us 73% last fiscal year, they were referred out because we could not accommodate them anywhere.
Okay, now I was kind of understanding that this is for domestic, and but I see where what you said tonight could be homeless shelter, all kinds of different things. So is it going to strictly be for domestic violence, or is this going to turn into a homeless shelter for anyone?
It's not gonna be a homeless shelter for anyone. What it's gonna be is a shelter, emergency shelter that can house domestic violence and homeless individuals, and they will be separated.
Separated, but still at the same place.
Yes.
So it would be. And we're looking at this grant, if we stop, we'll have to pay back $3 million to the federal government.
There is, yes.
And it's gonna start out at $400,000 a year is what's gonna be costing us, because this basically just gonna cover construction.
That's correct. This does not include operation expenses.
What are you figuring operational expenses at as a ballpark every year?
About 370,000 for year one. I think 2 to 3%, it grows each year from that.
And when you made the comment that would be housed in the county victims of domestic violence, I was under the impression, as Commissioner Holt was, that counties tried to put those victims in a different county for their safety's sake. What happens if someone comes to that facility locally, knowing where it's at, and looking for them? We open ourselves up to liability here? Someone getting hurt?
That is the challenge with any shelter. I will tell you, when they call us, they're asking for a shelter bed in Castle County. And I say, where are you located? Oh, I'm in Providence, I'm in Pelham, I'm in Leesburg. I want to stay here. Well, we don't have a shelter here. I can't really speak to, I mean, I can without getting into too many details, but I can say that they want to stay here. And there's this thing that a lot of people still think that we still operate the shelter because we say sheltering services. And what we can do, people have asked us to put them up at the hotel. And for some people that's appropriate, for some people it's not. It just depends on each individual situation.
And for clarity's sake, if we ran the shelter and for some reason the county could continue to run it for a 10-year time frame, we would be on the hook for the whole 350 days back. Year 11, you get 20% knocked off. So
That is correct. There is that clause in the stipulations.
Gwen,
Yes.
without going into specifics, can you tell the board how many domestic violence calls have the 12-month period that are seeking shelter?
That are seeking shelter. I think it was 140 that came in 22 to 23. And of that 73%, I can't remember that exact number. I'm sure there might be a more math inclined person.
73% of that number
That's
are
right,
seeking
yes.
shelter.
Yes.
Okay.
And then others will come in the next day and say, well, we do want a shelter. They will come in for intake.
Mr. Mayor, got a couple of questions. First, thanks for all you have done. I feel that there is a need for this shelter. We had one for a number of years. There's 15-year commitments here and there. A couple of questions. When we did have that shelter a number of years ago, how did we have that as far as operating? Was that through a grant?
I wasn't here then. I've only been here as long as there was no shelter in operation. I can tell you that every shelter is supported by grants. Supported, operated, funded, yes.
Next question, I was looking at some of these options you had in here, and a couple of things stood out to me. Why would we need 22 acres and why would we need 35 acres of land?
It was because that's the way the parcel is listed. And I think we've had that conversation about shrinking down the amount of acreage. So that is a conversation that we could probably have, possibly more than likely have with the seller.
None of this grant would fund any of the operating expenses.
No.
like I said, I do support having a shelter. I'm having problems with the path that we're going down. Like I said, I know for a fact we had 3 shelters in the county, 3 different locations. And I'm just wondering how we operated that for all these years that we had it. Rather than getting into this, there's something. We're gonna come back, and pay this money back.
Ms. Quinn, unfortunately, we can buy a price of property, building our own, with this grant, get the grant, could we use this grant to renovate?
We could have, if I had been able to find that property before submission and at this point in the grant application process.
It's in the past, we had, I know, I was going to, yeah, one of the, one of 6 people in the week, started more, eat them more. Understand what I never did about the fact. Well, I just think maybe might be some housing plans that we could buy and renovate and make it profitable.
And that's true, and that some of those opportunities have come to me since I've been putting out that we were interested in applying for this funding. I will say that we're up against a deadline for the application. It's only been open for 22 days and it closes this Friday. And Castle County, they are encouraged by the grant interest proposal that I put together. I've included in attachment 1A and 1B in your packet, because this opportunity doesn't come around often at all, really, for a $3 million grant to build a non-congregate shelter in rural areas, and I think that's the key.
It's a lot of information to be dumped at once with having to make a decision tonight. Why were we not approached before now?
Well, it was mentioned in April that this grant application was on the radar. So, and I included those minutes in the presentation. And so the reason why the packet was not included with the agenda packet was because we were waiting on the preliminary design to come from the architects.
It's a lot to be dropped right at the last minute. I have one more question.
Yes.
Is there any procedures or any kind of strategy in place to prevent what seems to be a lot of times a revolving door of domestic abuse victims? In other words, is there any kind of strategy to get them out of that situation long-term instead of being victimized by it over and over?
Mr. Chairman, I go through this and I struggle with that. And we have secured grant funding for new interventions. We have implemented those, albeit during the pandemic. So some of them could not be implemented to fidelity, but we've gotten extensive training on how to empower, provide self-sufficiency skills. But really, it's ultimately, they are the driver of their own bus. And they make that decision whether they want to return or not. If they're ready to leave, we're there for them every time. And I know it's a revolving door, and it can be frustrating for people looking in, for us as advocates, when we see the same person come back, and we see the same abuser abuse another person that fell into the same cycle as somebody else who we have to empower and to break free. It is frustrating, but we exist because that ill in society exists. And that revolving door, it's very real, and we see it every day throughout the day, and the calls we get at 1 a.m. in the morning. And we're trying everything we can to let them know that they are supported, they are secure, but they have to make that decision themselves.
Let me ask you, when you're released out of the county, does the county pay that?
No. The other agencies that accept the callers that call for shelter bed, they get the money for housing that client.
Have you ever had a circumstance where someone requested some type of protective shelter from domestic violence and you couldn't meet that need in an adjoining county?
Yes, and we keep calling. We've placed them as far as Southern Pines, Fayetteville. Recently we took someone to Randolph County, which is not really far, it's still in the triad, but it's still further away than what they wanted, but yes.
Well, let me rephrase that. Have you ever had a situation where you couldn't place them anywhere?
Yes. And so in that situation, we have to absorb the cost and put them at a hotel.
But you were able to get them out of the situation that they were in, so to speak.
Yes, we don't, the emergency shelter at a hotel is not ideal because it's not autonomous and it's not private, regardless of which hotel you put them in. So, and it's not as secure as we would want.
On the picture, it's, I'm not sure where this location is, but it says School Drive. Is this close to a school?
It's across the street from BY, kind of cat a corner down 62.
Is there any kind of legal thing with that being at a school?
The previous shelter was right adjacent to that property. So if it was, it would have been grandfathered in.
This would have been grandfathered. Do you know, Brian, if there's any kind of? No, there are certain requirements for people that like inside the school.
No, I'm not aware of any regulations around that. There are regulations around if you're receiving operational dollars for these kind of facilities, they have to be within so many miles of the school. They have to be within so many miles of library services. They have to be within so many miles of a grocery store or a convenience store, so that the residents can get everyday kind of thing.
And it's the only stipulations that it is close to community resources.
Mr. Farrell, do you know of anything where you're putting, I guess, homeless shelter, domestic violence right across the street from the school?
I'm not aware of any regulation about citing facility in proximity to a school. Not to say they're not there. I haven't researched that issue.
When you did say the first year it was 370,000, and you increased 2% every year thereafter.
Yes.
You say this application is due by this Friday.
That's correct.
Okay. Just for the sake of this conversation. If the board said go ahead, that's unlimited money. You get approved. What kind of time frame are you looking at? Acquiring an architect, having a building built before it be ready?
Probably 2 to 3 fiscal years, I think we discussed. The funds just have to be extended by 2030. So that'd be 29-30 fiscal year. I will say the decision wouldn't come back until December, early January of December of 23, early January of 24.
At what point is this architect going to start charging? Or are they charging now?
That's a great question, and I'm glad you asked that question. So one of the things that I don't think or Ms. Gwynn's covered this yet. I think it was part of the conversation. So commissioners, as Ms. Gwynn told you, this is not accepting the grant. It's approving her to move forward with the grant. Where we're at though is if we move forward with the grant, there's going to be charges that we're going to have to pay to consultants, to architects, to engineers, to do all the things that make up the grant. And I don't have a good idea of what those charges are. Do you?
I can say that right now, we can refer back to upfront costs, and I don't have the exact figures in front of me.
So we are at a point to where if you approve this, you will have to start spending some money. Now, if we get the grant, and if you accept the grant, that money is reimbursable with the grant.
If we don't, we're.
If you don't, you spent money, and that's it. So I think that's important to know. Most of the time, and with most shelters that I'm aware of, there are the operational costs, receive grant funding to cover those costs. And most of the time, there's little to no county match associated with that. But that's not a guarantee. So what I would say to you as board members is, if you approve this, hope that there's grant funding to support the operational costs, but also understand that that might fall in the board's lap at some point in time. That's $370,000, which equates to 2.15 cents of a tax increase for year one. So I'm just trying to provide you with all the information so you understand where we're at.
And I'll direct this to the county manager, Ms. Gwynn, due to the fact, Ms. Gwynn said that she was not here when these other shelters were in operation. How did we do those shelters at that time?
Those shelters were funded with grant funds. The operational costs were paid with grant funds. But here again, grant funding is great when you have it. I think I would be doing the board a disservice. I personally believe we can probably get grant funding to cover the operational costs, but I can't tell you that 100% and guarantee that. I don't have Ms. Quinn, have you spoken to any operational funders, grant funders to see what their thoughts are?
I have. I've talked to the Family Violence Prevention Service Act, and they told me that they have a different scale for brick and mortar shelters than they do for prevention providers. And so that would be where we fall. If we had a brick and mortar shelter, there would be more money that we get. So for example, in the overview, we had $47,500 from FISA core. If you had a brick and mortar shelter under the new scale that they're going to implement in the next fiscal year, we will qualify for a minimum of, I think it's 120, because they're going to have less awards for I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. They're going to shrink the number of awardees to increase the amount that you get. So right now we have 47.5, which is the base for non-operating a shelter. And it used to be 20,000.
So one of the things that I can tell you is Ms. Gwynn's done a tremendous job bringing additional funding into the county since she's been a director. I feel fairly confident if there's money out there, she can go get it. However, those things are left up to the legislature. I mean, who knows what they're going to apply to the budget. So I can tell you that we would do everything we can to get those operational dollars, but I can't promise you. And this is a big decision. It's $3 million.
I can assure you, one last thought, that if there's any concern, no more spending will happen unless this board approves it. And I'm not saying that spending has happened, but I'm just saying that no more charges will be incurred. Or no charges.
But this is for either one or another, it's either one. You have no idea tonight what these expenses are that we will have to spend between now and December. We say, yeah, go ahead and apply, as far as consultant, architect. We have any idea?
Yes, probably about $2,500 for the consultant that is required by the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency. There's going to be a fee for the architect who created that mock-up that's in your packet. I'm not sure about that fee because I just am unsure.
Your architect fee is gonna be high.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're looking at building some stuff, and we're talking about 60 grand for an architect.
yeah, this is,
So that would be extremely, and looking at what you have here, it would probably be at least 60.
Well, we told him,
What would it be? The young lady shaking her head behind her.
this is Robin Peaks. Can she be recognized to answer that question possibly?
yes.
Yes, yes.
So we, thank you, Robin Heeks with Heeks Collaborative. We worked really hard in the last 3 weeks to get the team together to get this application. I wish NCHFA gave you all a larger window in which to react, but Tice Keister Architects does these all the time. They're super efficient. I have not gotten their fee proposal yet, but for other similar projects, it was $6,000 and less. So, and that's because it's just the schematics. It won't be until NCHFA invites you all to receive the grant and you guys approve receiving the grant that you all would finalize a contract and negotiate those final fees with the architect and any other person who's really going to be doing work on this project. Once the application goes in on Friday, everything really goes on hold until you all make a decision as to whether or not you want to proceed with the project and receiving the grant money.
I want to know how much money we're gonna have to put out to see.
For the disbursement, it won't come until just during construction, so 1.5 that'll be reimbursed. 50%. I'm being transparent.
So you want a motion
To just apply for it.
I'll make that motion.
What was the
Couldn't hear the motion. I'm
Like,
sorry.
so I will make a motion that she apply for it, if I can get a second.
Have a motion on the floor to apply for the grant. We have a second.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to apply for the grant. We'll do roll call vote. Okay.
No, I need to call for discussion. I'm kind of like Commissioner Rose. I think it's a good thing to have a shelter. I really do. I've never had a family member that I know of been a victim of domestic violence, but I know that it's a real problem. But not knowing what, and it might not be $5,000 we have to spend between now and December, not knowing that number and that 15-year clawback gives me a lot of heartburn. I just, we could get this $3 million and get the building built and 8 years down the road say, well, this just ain't worth it. It's costing us too much and we don't have any occupants. So.
To apply, is a fee for that?
Not
There's
to,
no fee, there's no, are we obligated in any way if you apply?
We'll be obligated to start paying the architect and all these other things because they will not keep working for free.
their work is done.
One question. The young lady here, the comment that you made about the $6,000, what were you referring to there? I couldn't exactly hear you.
Yeah, so to prepare the application, NCHFA requires certain exhibits. One of those exhibits is a schematic of your design, and they don't expect it to be final. They just want to get a sense that your team knows how to manage that budget. And that when we say we want to build 10 to 15 units, that we have a good handle on what that requires spatially and financially. So I think one of your attachments is that design that Tice Keister prepared. Their work is done at this point. It's not approved by Aisha or you all, but it is enough to give NCHFA a flavor of what this project might look like. And so they have done that and they do it all the time and they're very reasonable and efficient with their time. So again, I don't have the proposal, the invoice from them or the proposal from them, but in my experience, I don't expect them to charge for more than 6,000 for what they have already done. And then you guys have a contract with me for just this application fee, period. And I think it is a total of probably 7,500, 2,500 to get started, 5,000 at the time that we submit the application. And that all comes out of the final fee that is a part of the schematic budget plan that she has. So it's essentially a piece of the larger development consultant fee.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, that's 6,000 plus 7,500, so $13,500 is the upfront cost we would.
Yes, and when Aisha and I first met, I think I said, you know, do you guys have the ability to pay 20,000 if that's what it takes? Because we were thinking about surveys and appraisers, and would we need additional consultation from other professionals? At this point, we don't need those things. We feel comfortable with the material that we have in the application. So I think you guys are good with the numbers that we've already shared with you, and no additional invoices are expected.
Okay.
So this drawing here is not, is this drawing you have in this packet, is that what you want to see?
That's a preliminary, and that's based on one round of feedback, because that's what we've had time for. They responded to our comments and gave us another draft. There's still a lot more work to be done on it, and that's an okay part of the process. NCHFA understands that these are very preliminary.
Mr. Lincoln. One other question, you said 8 employees in particular in this facility.
I think I said about 6 to 8, but 6.
Okay, so the facility, it would fall under state guidelines or regulations, correct?
It should.
Okay. What happens if we don't have enough? You have more people in that shelter than you have employees able to operate it. Or do you have to close?
That is an excellent question, and I can find that out for you, but I can tell you that the plan is to have a team, like the live-in staff, the caseworker staff, is not to have like 1 or 2 rotating. It's supposed to be a team. That's why I say 6 to 8.
Right, I mean, that was just my question. I know, you know, we're right now, we're always everywhere. I just, that's one of the questions I had, if it was state regulated, and for some reason, we didn't have adequate staffing for that facility due to the amount of people you had in it, what would happen to that facility? Would it have to close?
It may, I think I have heard of other shelters having to close because of staffing issues for a period of time, and then they reopen. The funders understand that, they expect that, and they have clauses in their contracts for that. That I can say.
How would that affect this grant?
This grant, I don't know if that's operating and this was the construction. So I think there might be some type of stipulation where it's like they understand, not necessarily they understand, but they can give a little bit of leeway if it's closed for, let's say, 2 weeks because there was no staffing and we couldn't have any new admissions.
I'm sorry, I need to go back and forth. Is there a bill or have we spent any money to this architectural firm now, but whether or not we say no tonight, or we don't get a bill from them?
We are going to get a bill from them, an invoice from them.
So who approved that?
In our grant funding, we had that amount. Not from
That's
NCHFA.
if you get the grant, but
No. This is from a separate grant. We have 6 grants.
So these drawings from Tice Keister, I guess I'm saying that right.
Yes.
Are these the only required drawings as far as the application goes? or will there have to be something more detailed?
No, that's sufficient.
So the architect won't have to do anything else
No,
for the application.
not for
So
that.
if you get the money, if it gets approved,
Yeah.
I think that's what the cost is going to be.
6,000. Would there be another 7,500 on top of that if we say yes?
No.
Yes, so the 7,500 is for the consultant, $6,000 is for the architect, both of which are required by the grant. So there would be, the total would be 13,500 that we have spent now or that we will be spending. Depending on both.
We have not received an invoice from Price Keister, so we haven't.
I realize that.
Yeah.
That's-
So I can't, so we can't answer that.
Answer. How much is it we owe right now if we said no?
I actually do not know. It should be no more than $6,000.
If we say yes, it'll be 13,000.
I'm sorry, I missed that last
If
one.
we say yes, it would be 13,000.
I imagine it would be, that way we can finish out the application.
What are the consultants? What are we paying for there?
Say
The consultant fees, what are we paying for?
the consultant is required by the grant to make sure the grant applications are complete, they're the right information that the granting agency wants is in there, that it's accurate, to make sure the cost estimates are accurate. You know, a lot of jurisdictions just don't have the capacity for people to write grants and go through this process correctly. So the consultant is somebody to help guide through the grant process.
Is it required?
It is required.
It is required.
Yep.
Even though agent is fully capable of doing it.
Yep. And it's required by, it's required. And here again, if you get the grant and you accept the grant, it's refundable or, yeah.
It comes,
Reimbursement.
that 13,500, board approves for her application gets approved. That 13,500 can come back out of that rebate.
It can if you accept the $3 million.
If we don't accept it, it's just money.
It's just 13,500.
So you're almost put in a situation you're voting on it tonight. Is the, one last question, is this in this packet, this acreage that you're looking at, would that have to be, is that included in your application?
Yes.
Okay, but you said y'all will be looking at going back and getting, like I said, that's a big sticking point with me, is the 22 acres and 35. It's a whole lot of land
It is.
that you get rid of off tax books. Because once you put it off tax books, I mean, for that facility, for what I'm looking at, that's a whole lot of land.
Ladies and gentlemen, we all have a lot of questions that have been answered here, and I'm sure we can all, some point in time, we got to call for a vote on this issue. We have a motion and a second. My heart goes out to the victims of domestic violence. It's a real bad situation. The cost associated with this it's high, and it's giving us all a lot to think about. You got a 15-year obligation for the project. $300-some thousand, almost $400,000 operators. But at some point, we're gonna have to call for the pleasure of the court. We'll vote on this, continue to discuss. All right. We do roll call voting. Mr. Holt?
No.
Mr. Rhodes?
No.
Mr. Yarborough? No. Mr. Jeffers? Yes. Mr. McVeigh? No. Ms. Queen?
Yes.
Motion does not pass.
Thank you for your time, Commissioner.
Next up, we have additional land use regulations. Brian Miller.
Commissioners, you'll see in your agenda packet, the additional land use regulation, examples that, Matthew Bowman, our planning director, has provided for you. He and I spoke several weeks ago, and I asked Matthew to come up with some, potential billboard, regulations or examples of what other communities did to regulate billboards in their communities. With the casino coming, and we're already seeing increased traffic on Highway 86. With the increased traffic, it's very likely that we're going to have many applications for billboards. We wanted to get these in front of you to have you start thinking about these things. We don't expect you to make any kind of decisions on this tonight. This is purely for discussion. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about the information that's been provided. But we can certainly provide you with this information, bring it back at another time if you want to drill down or have a special work session or whatever the pleasure of the board is. But we wanted to bring this information to you and provide it to you so you could start thinking about it. And so if you were inclined to act on something like this, you could do so.
Any questions?
Hadn't the town?
The town has.
Billboards inside town.
The town has, and from my understanding, what the town did is they regulated billboards to where only if you have a business operating in the town limits can you put up a billboard. So Caesar's Casino could not put up a billboard inside Yanceyville's town limits because they don't have a business operating there. I think there's some other smaller regulations that went along with that, but that's my understanding.
So for all intents and purposes, what we're really talking about here is trying to avoid having the county like you're on the south border.
That's correct. That's exactly what it is. I know NCDOT and there's a lot of other agencies that kind of regulate billboards as well. But I think the county with its powers, land use regulations, you can direct some of that. And I just think it's better for us to get it in front of you now and have you start thinking about it now than 8 months down the road when we already have 30 applications for billboards up and down 86.
So what are you recommending?
We can bring that back to you. We can bring this back on a future agenda. We can take your recommendations. We can make recommendations to you from other jurisdictions that have seen similar instances. We're happy to do whatever the board wants us to. If you want us to come up with a proposal, then we're happy to do so.
What's the pleasure of the board?
My suggestion is let them come up with a proposal and bring it back to them. See where we're at.
I agree with that. No, can you come up with something? Come back to it?
Yes, sir.
Moving on to the next item on the agenda, the conflict of interest policy. Brian.
So commissioners, every year we have, every 2 years, excuse me, Family Services has to have certain policies in place and approved by the board. This is one of the policies that the board needs to approve for us to be able to receive the grant funding that currently funds family services. So that's the reason this is in front of you in a nutshell. This is not the only policy that will be required. There will be additional policies come back to you at the next meeting, surrounding family services and their funding requirements. So we have to have the conflict of interest approved by the board and in place for us to continue to receive the grant.
What is the pleasure of the board? Be approved. Have a motion, second. Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carried. Next up on the action items is the contract for legal services for the George B. Daniel Law Firm to collect delinquent taxes for the county. That contract you have a copy of that's been passed out. It expired on June of last month, June 30th last month. I want to talk about not renewing that contract with the Daniel Law Firm, instead renewing that contract with the Johnston Law Firm, Russell Johnston. Any comments, discussion on the issue?
I didn't quite hear what you said. I was kind of
Mr. Jeffries, the next item up is the discussion of the contract for collection of delinquent taxes for Castle County. And I want to discuss, it expired June the 30th of this year. Last month it expired on June 30th. What I want to do is I'm making a motion. Let me do this officially. I'm making a motion that we do not renew that contract with the Daniel Law Firm. Instead, award that contract to Russell Johnston of the Johnston Law Firm.
I'd like to second that.
Have a motion and a second. Any other question or discussion?
Sure, do we know what Mr. Johnson is going to be part of?
Under the same terms of the contract it was.
Same as this.
Same as that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Miller, this contract we have for us is a 5-year term. Or is it all set up, is it always been set up like that?
Yes.
Well, if there are no other questions, we have a motion and a second. We'll do roll call vote. Start out with Mr. Hall.
Which way I'm wording it, wording it again, so I understand how the voting is from. That it's
A vote
that we change the law.
A yes vote on this proposal is to not renew the contract with the Daniel Law Firm and to award the contract to Russell Johnson of the Johnson Law Firm. I vote yes. We have yes from Mr. Holt.
One quick question. Is Mr. Johnson submitted anything saying that he would?
Yes, yes, he has. Yes, he has. Several commissioners have talked with myself. Yes, sir.
I don't want to get to it, and he says, oh, no, I'm not gonna do that.
No, sir, I got some of them again right before I walked in here. Make sure that that was still a contract that we want.
I mean, I'd just like to see something. I'd just like to see something where he says that he doesn't those contracts.
Well, yes, sir, he's talked to several of them, sure, that he will take.
Yeah. I'm not gonna say nothing. You
Okay,
help
all right, Mr. Rose and Ms. Giacomo. Mr. Jeffries. Mr. McVeigh.
I would love to see a contract, but I'll go ahead and say aye.
Ms. Wayne. And I am an ayes with motion carries. On to the next item on the agenda. It is the contract of legal services for Brian Farrell. Mr. Coe.
Commissioners, we have county attorney on Zoom with us tonight. This is the contract for legal services. Basically, the payments have not changed from last year to this year. They've stayed flat. I think this contract has served us well over the last year. I think it saved us quite a bit of money over the last year. So having said that, I'll turn it over to Brian Farrell and he can take it from there.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we offer our legal services to you on the same terms and conditions substantially as last year with the $6,500 flat fee for services enumerated in the agreement, with obviously carve outs for services that we don't provide for that flat fee. Be the same as we've done last year, and of course the board is able to terminate the agreement at any time with notice for me, even though the term does run for a year. You're not obligated for a full year. If the relationship's not working out, either of us can terminate at any time. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about how the agreement works or any other questions.
Is it my understanding, this is just what I've heard, that they were supposed to be present in meetings before COVID came along and something got changed with COVID?
Right. Yeah. For a long time, none of us, had remote participation. We were always there. And during COVID, I believe the county realized that it could, not pay mileage for me to travel up there. Some meetings I'm active and some meetings I'm not. And so it avoids a cost by having my remote participation. And that really came about when the technology came online for the Zoom during COVID.
I know when you say mileage, that you've since moved to the beach, is my understanding.
Yeah, so I work remotely from Eastern North Carolina and Carteret County most of the time. I'm back in Durham quite a bit. I was there last week. When I do have mileage that's charged for planned trips, it's from my office in Durham, not from here. So for instance, when I came up for the pre-hearing conference and when I'll drive to Raleigh for the hearings in the property tax matter, we considered it's all from my office in Durham. So no net change there from the years and years I've been providing the services. And of course, should the county, should the commissioners, like me to attend a meeting or it makes sense for me to attend a meeting, I'm perfectly willing to do that.
Mr. Farrell, how many years has the law firm you represent been working together?
That's a good question. In total, it's coming up on 8 or 9 years. I'd have to go back and look.
Earl, is it standard practice for attorneys not to be present in their jurisdiction where they are the county attorney?
I think it varies. I think it varies. I think most employee attorneys, so there's a couple of models in North Carolina for county and town attorneys. Smaller jurisdictions also often have contract legal services arrangements like I do, and their attorney may or may not be present in the jurisdiction. For instance, there's a firm in Chapel Hill that I do quite a bit of work with, and I think they represent maybe 10 or 11 towns across North Carolina. They travel for that. So I don't think that's uncommon in towns with smaller legal budgets, legal departments, if you will. I would say if you had an in-house legal, like employee, an attorney that was an employee that was on site every day, that it would be more typical in my experience to have that employee, reside within the county.
Earl, is there any legal prohibition that would stop you from being both the county attorney and the county attorney that handles legal tax collection?
Can you say that one more time? I missed that last part.
Is there any legal prohibition that would stop you from having both roles as the county attorney to the board and the attorney that takes up the cause of delinquent tax collection for the county?
Oh, would there be a prohibition on that?
Is any conflict in that?
I don't know that there'd be any conflict in that. I've never done that since I've provided legal services to the county. That work was always provided by another firm. That does require it's sort of a paralegal heavy practice. And I don't know that we currently have the staffing to take that on in our paralegal section. But there's nothing that prevents it. I've just never done it. Never been asked to do it.
That was what I was asking. That it'll be pretty obvious why I'm asking that question here in a minute too. Are there any other commissioners who would like to comment?
I didn't know, have you got any comments? No, I don't have any comments, no, just, I didn't know we had moved.
Nothing against your firm, Mr. Firm, and definitely nothing against you personally. But I'm kind of like the folks that small business that want you to shop local. I'm kind of that way with my attorney. I like my attorney to be local, like that, nothing against you. So I would like the board to consider someone locally for like was out there. And I know we just gave the man one job a few minutes ago. I really think Russell Johnson will do us a good job as county attorney. He's a county native. He knows everyone on the board, I'm sure. And he's willing to do it.
He is willing to do it. I've spoken with him as well.
At what cost?
Same terms as the current contract. Exact same thing.
Mr. Commissioner, Jeff, what did you say?
Same terms as what Mr. Burrow has in his current contract. No change.
I like Russell very much and think he's very competent as well. And he is local.
And he's made the same comment about you. He spoke very highly of you.
With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna make a motion. I make a motion that we do not renew the contract for being the county attorney with Brian Farrell, and that we award the contract to the county attorney to Russell Johnson of the Johnson Law Firm. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. We'll do roll call vote, and I'll start on the opposite side this time. Mr. Gill. Mr. McVeigh. No. Ms. Quinn. Mr. Yarborough. Mr. Rhodes.
Since we got him doing one, I'll go with this one and say aye.
Mr. Holt. And I am a yes. Aye as well. Motion carries. Moving on to the next item on the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that. And before we move on, I'd just like to say I appreciate the opportunity to serve the county for all these years. And I'm happy to work out a transition plan if it's useful with the manager. There are a number of active cases that Mr. Johnson will need to take over quite quickly. So I'm happy to work with the manager and Russell on that transition plan if it pleases the board.
Thank you, sir. Very appreciate that. Very gracious. We appreciate that very much. Next up is the Board of Adjustment request, Brian Miller.
So commissioners, on tonight's agenda, you have two requests from the Board of Adjustments. The first request is for alternates. I think the board is requesting 5 alternates be appointed. Obviously, I don't think we have 5 applications for the Board of Adjustments. If the board approves that, we'll advertise for those alternate positions and bring those back to you at another time. I have spoken with the planning director about the alternates, and he believes that the alternates would be very helpful in serving the Board of Adjustments.
Mr. Chairman, I believe as well on that board, if I'm correct, it's a 5-member board, and they have to have at least 4 members present.
That's correct.
They can't operate in 3. When I served on it, we had at least one occasion, 3 of us attended, and we didn't have to meet. So, well, I mean, such a board, we'll go that way. So, no, I was gonna say we'd be posting, asking folks to volunteer for the board. Got to approve it first.
Right. So if this is a 2-part ask. So the second part is the Board of Adjustments has requested $20 per person per meeting as payment to the board to reimburse them for their expenses.
Comments or questions on the board?
Chairman, I move that we try to find alternates for the Board of Adjustment. However many we can find, up to 5.
And work out, 2 parts to it.
One part motion.
Okay. All right, we have a motion to approve the appointees or alternates to the board. Do we have a second? Got a second. All right, got a motion and a second. We'll do roll call voting and we'll start on this side this time. Mr. Holt. Mr. Rhodes. Mr. Yarborough. Mr. Jeffries. Mr. McVeigh. Ms. Quinn. And I am out, so motion carries. Next up is the.
Mr. Chairman, we'll still say, we had the second part. I don't know if you want to.
I assume by it not being brought up that that is what it said in the
And if that's what the board did, that's what the board did.
Is that what you meant, Mr. Yarborough?
I wanted to cover it all. The board wants to discuss it all. Fine.
Okay, gentlemen, I interpreted it as one way. What's the pleasure of the board? What do y'all want to do? Well, I interpreted his motion to mean that he didn't want to entertain the second part of paying $20 for a person. His motion was only to approve the alternate. Now, the other issue that Mr. Miller brought up, of paying the board members, is in consideration. What is the comments of the board? What crickets?
Didn't Mr. Miller, didn't this come up before the board last year? We did not approve.
It came up last year and the board took no action.
Refresh my memory that we talked about this one time before, and one of the sticking points was we started paying this board a stipend and the others get a stipend. You gave us a figure on what that would cost.
Yeah, and that cost is about $50,000, $45,000 to $50,000.
If that is for any questions from the board. What is the pleasure of the board, fellas?
So that's what it would cost today if we implement this.
Yes. Well, no, not for just the Board of Adjustment, but for all boards and committees within the county.
It was about 500 from last year, $20 per person is what the board would pay. Total. Compared to other boards getting, where some individuals get like $100 on the ABC board per meeting, or $40 or $60.
Yeah.
If there is no motion, Mr. Clay, would you like to be ready?
If I may, since this board was appointed, it would have, had they been paid $20 per member per meeting, the grand total the taxpayers would have had to pay is about 1 month's commissioners stipend so far, because they meet on an as-needed basis. The previous Board of Adjustment was paid. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
When he's saying previous board, which board's he talking about?
It was planning board.
You guys were the Board of Adjustment.
The planning
We're
board,
not talking about how long has it been? Don't look at me so hateful.
I'm not. I can't hardly hear you.
You can't hardly hear me.
No,
I don't think nobody else is having any trouble hearing me.
no, but $6,000 worth.
Just, no, you don't need to, you shouldn't even be making comment.
Mr. Chairman,
Let's break that up. Do we have any motion from the board to entertain this idea, or are we moving on to the next item? Hearing no motion from the floor, the item is dead. We're moving on to the next item. County manager updates.
I think we have boards and committees, Mr. Chairman.
Wait a minute, not this one?
I think we have. We have a couple.
Board committee. All right, board committee appointments. Mr. Miller.
So commissioners, we have the Board of Health, we have 1 vacancy, we have 1 application, Amanda Everett.
Please be appointed. Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries.
Commissioners, we have the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council, we have 1 vacancy, 3 vacancies. And we have 2 applications, Aisha Gwynn and Brenda Day.
Hold on. How many vacancies do we have?
We have 3 vacancies, so Brenda Day and Aisha Gwynn are terming off. So they are reapplying for the same positions they currently fill, plus there's 1 vacancy on.
I'll make a motion to appoint Ms. Davis.
Second. The motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries.
So commissioners, we have the Tourism Development Authority, TDA. We have 2 members coming off, Karen Ostriker, who is not reapplying, and Mr. Ahmed. We have 3, we've received 3 applications, Jeff Tile, Angela Upchurch, and Mr. Ahmed.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to send Angela Upchurch and Ahmed Hamid on the board.
A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed, motion carries.
And commissioners, on the back page, I'll just bring to your attention, there's a whole page of vacancies we have on boards and committees that we have no application.
These, you take applications at any time.
I will, and I'll bring the names to the board if you get applications.
Mr. Furr, looking at these boards, just real briefly, I want to touch on something. Weren't we talking about at one time some of these boards being dissolved because they don't meet and they're really,
We were, and I haven't gotten that list back. I was waiting back to hear from the chairpersons of each individual board. I have not done that. I've not heard back from all of those. But that's something that's still on our radar.
And I think Mr. Wood has come up with an agreement with chair. His appointment on the board of PPRC.
Correct, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Gwen is going to take the RC committee, and I'm going to look at taking the Board of Health committee from her, but I probably will consult, or have Mr. Lee consult with our new attorney to make sure there's not a conflict of interest. In fact, my daughter does. Okay. If there is a conflict, then I will try to do it. I will work on it. We won't have to do this one.
Well, since I was going to be, I would be there, right, with Mr. Foster. I may as well take it. It's not been an hour long.
Everybody on board with agreement, in agreement with that? Anybody opposed on that? All those, let's do this officially. Do we have a motion do we need a motion to do that, or we receive notification to?
We need the board consensus from the board.
Okay, we got a consensus of the board, y'all are fine. Go ahead.
Perfect. So, Mr. Chairman, the last thing that we have on action items is voting delegate for the NCACC conference. We right now, that conference is August 24th through the 26th. We know right now 2 commissioners that will be attending. That's Commissioner Jeffries and Commissioner Nguyen. The board can appoint one of those as a voting delegate for that conference. I'd like to nominate Ms. Nguyen to do that.
You have a nomination from Ms. Williams, I hear a second. Second. Got a motion and a second from the board to make Ms. Williams the voting delegate to the NCACC conference. Do roll call voting. Jeffries. Mr. McGuty. Ms. Williams. Mr. Holt. Mr. Rose. Mr. Yarborough. Mr. Dickerson, and yes. Motion carries. Congratulations, Ms. Williams. That is the last item on the action agenda that I'm seeing here tonight. Next up would be county manager updates.
Commissioners, I just have a couple of updates I'll bring to the board. The first update is I'd like to inform the board that I did attend the CRL conference, County Reinsurance Limited Conference. It's a great conference, learned a lot of good information that I think will benefit the county in years to come as it relates to reinsurance. So I'm happy to be back from that trip. It was a long trip, and I'm glad to be back. I'm happy to answer any questions the board has about any updates they would want. I will tell you that the second round of the great grant occurred. It was doubtful whether Casual would receive any funding from the second round of the great grant, but I'm happy to announce that Spectrum did receive an additional, I believe it's 606 addresses from the second round of the great grant. So that's 606 more addresses that will be covered in Casual, along with the addresses they're covering now and with what Zytel is covering. Keep in mind, we still have CAB and the last mile, those 2 programs to go. So I'm happy to answer any other questions you may have about it.
Any other questions from the board? You brought up Spectrum. Got a status update on when they expect to wind up the first phase?
The last estimate I heard was a month and a half that they would be finished with RDOF. That's probably been 2 weeks ago. I do have a meeting with Spectrum for, I believe it's the 20th.
Because I know they were looking at the map for RDOF. They were supposed to cover most of the ridge roads in Costa Rica. Subcontractor did a mile and a tenth back in the winter. That's been it.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't find a sub, you can't find a spectrum reader, no one. Like it fell off the face of the earth.
Well, I have that meeting scheduled, and I'm sorry, I misspoke, it's the 26th that I'm meeting with, Spectrum to get an update.
Okay, next. I know in years past, and I don't know if it's been in recent years or not, but the district engineer for DOT would always come on board and give kind of update of what the DOT plan on doing for the next 12 months. Does that still occur?
Yeah, I think it was Ryan Orchard came. It's not been too terribly long ago, and gave an update to the board. It's probably been a year or a little bit more than a year.
It had been since I've been.
Yeah, I'll certainly reach out to DOT and see if they're interested. I'm sure they will be coming back and talking to them.
Last thing for me. How's things going with the CPA firm finance audits? Audit. How are we progressing?
So, the audit is in the auditor's hands.
Okay.
They're doing their work now. There may be some additional documentation that they'll request from us throughout the process, but the information's available.
This is fiscal
21, and from what I understand, the plan that we have, I don't know 100% if we're going to be able to do it. But the plan we have right now is to do 22 and 23 concurrent. So we hope we'll be able to do those at the same time. The auditors will be able to do both those audits at the same time. And then when we finish that, we'll be completely caught up.
How much has that cost the county?
I don't have a total on this right now. I'm happy to get that and bring it back to you.
We'll move on to commissioner comments.
Mr. Chair, I would like to extend my condolences to the Gordon Satterfield family on his passing. Mr. Satterfield, the commissioner here, I believe, for about 16 years, and just like to pass it on to the family. Thank you.
If there are no further comments, move on to announcements, upcoming events, August 7th, 2023, Commissioners meeting 6:30 p.m. here at the historic courthouse. August 17th, 2023, 6 p.m. There'll be a joint town meeting at the town hall for Milton inside the Thomas J. Museum. August 21st, 2023, Commissioners meeting, including the Board of Education meeting at 6 p.m. at the Gun Memorial Library. And finally, August 24th through 26th, 2023 NCACC Annual Conference. That wraps up all the announcements. Next up is the closing session. To consider the qualifications, competence, performance, character, fitness, conditions of appointment, and conditions of initial employment of an individual public officer or employee to prospective public officer or employee, CCBOC 143-18, 11A, Division 6. Do I have a motion to go into closed session? So move. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Set in closed session.